All right, everybody, welcome back to the show. It's time to get into another deep dive. And this time, we're going up north to Canada.
Oh, Canada.
To look at an interesting article from the Canadian press. Came out December 3rd, 2024. So pretty recent. And, this is one of those stories that's kind of right up our alley, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, this is the kind of stuff that's really interesting to see how the different political parties are all playing this kind of game of chess with each other to, jockey for power.
Yeah. I mean, to set the scene for people who might not, be up on Canadian politics every day.
Sure.
This article talks about how the Conservatives are really making a play right now.
Right.
They're ahead in the polls.
Yes.
And they're really trying to force an election. And they're doing this by introducing a non-confidence motion against the Liberals, which, is pretty intense.
Yeah. Yeah. A non-confidence motion, for people who are maybe not familiar, is basically a vote in the parliament that says we don't have confidence in the current government. And that could potentially trigger an election.
Right.
So it's a pretty big deal. And
yeah, it's not just like a, strongly worded letter.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's got some teeth to it.
Yeah, it has some serious consequences. And what's really interesting here is that they're using criticisms from the NDP leader, Jagmeet Singh, to justify this motion.
Right. So Jagmeet Singh has been pretty critical of the Liberals lately. They have a kind of agreement where the NDP is supporting the Liberals.
Yeah.
To keep them in power, but he's been saying, I'm not happy with the way they're doing things. You're not following through on our promises, and the Conservatives are kind of using that to say, well, look, even the NDP doesn't think you're doing a good job.
Exactly. Yeah. It's like, see, even their supposed allies are saying they're messing up.
Exactly, and it really puts Jagmeet Singh in a difficult position, because on the one hand, he's saying, these Liberals aren't good enough. They're not doing what they promised. But on the other hand, he's not willing to actually bring them down and let the Conservatives take power.
Yeah. It's like a weird situation where he's trying to thread this needle of criticizing the Liberals, but also not wanting to give the Conservatives the reins.
And I think the big reason for that is that he doesn't trust the Conservatives to protect the kind of social programs that the NDP really cares about.
Right, like dental care and pharmacare.
Exactly. Those are big priorities for the NDP. And they're worried that if the Conservatives get in, they're going to start cutting those programs.
Right. And that really goes to the heart of, I think, the differences between these parties. The NDP sees a big role for government.
Yeah, absolutely. The NDP has always been a party that believes in a strong social safety net, that the government should be there to support people who are struggling to provide healthcare and education and all these essential services, whereas the Conservatives tend to be more fiscally conservative. They believe in smaller government, lower taxes, and sometimes that means cutting back on some of those programs.
Right. Yeah. So it's really a clash of kind of core values about what the role of government should be.
Yeah, it's a fundamental difference in their worldview.
Yeah. And, the fact that the Conservatives are leading in the polls right now just gives them more ammunition for this strategy.
It gives them a lot of leverage, because they can say, well, look, the people are on our side. We're the most popular party, so you should just step aside and let us govern.
Right. And it's interesting that they're specifically using this non-confidence motion over this green technology fund.
Yes. This is kind of the thing that they're latching on to bring this motion forward.
Yeah, for people who maybe haven't been following this well.
Yeah.
The deal with this green technology fund.
So this is a fund that the Liberal government has set up to try to encourage investment in green technology, things like renewable energy and electric vehicles and that kind of stuff. And the Conservatives have been raising concerns about a lack of transparency around this fund.
Yeah.
They're saying that the government is not being clear about how the money's being spent, where it's going, who's benefiting from it, and they're demanding the release of these unredacted documents.
And so it's like they're trying to kind of paint a picture of like a shady deal going on.
Exactly. They're trying to make it sound like there's something suspicious happening.
Right. And it makes me wonder, like, is this a legitimate concern about transparency?
Right.
Or is this just a political tactic to try to embarrass the Liberals?
I think it's probably a bit of both. There are legitimate questions about government transparency that should always be asked and scrutinized. But I think the Conservatives are also using this to their advantage politically.
Yeah. It's like they're kind of hitting two birds with one stone.
Right.
They're raising a legitimate issue, but they're also using it to score political points.
Exactly.
So what do you think this all means for the future of Canadian politics?
Well, I think it suggests that we're in for a pretty turbulent time. The conservatives are clearly not going to let up. They're going to keep pushing for an election. They're going to keep trying to find ways to embarrass the liberals, and the NDP is caught in this kind of awkward position of trying to balance their own values with the political realities of the situation.
Yeah.
So I think it's going to be very interesting to see how all of this plays out.
Yeah, I'm curious too. And, as I look at all of this stuff, it does make me think a little bit about the sponsorship scandal.
Oh, yeah.
Back in like the early 2000s, which also involved questions of government transparency and accountability. And, it makes me wonder, are we seeing kind of a pattern here? Are certain parties more prone to these kinds of controversies? Or are we just witnessing like the messy nature of democracy, where things aren't always going to be perfect and there's going to be mistakes made?
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting question to ponder. And I don't think there's an easy answer. I think there's always a tension in any democracy between the desire for transparency and accountability and the need for government to be able to operate effectively. And sometimes those things come into conflict.
Right. Yeah. And I think it's on us as citizens to really hold our elected officials accountable.
Absolutely.
To make sure that they're being transparent.
Yeah.
And that they're acting in the best interest of the public.
And to be informed and engaged and to pay attention to what's going on.
Exactly. So that's what we're trying to do here with these deep dives.
That's what we're all about.
So thanks for joining us, folks. And we'll be back soon with another one.
Absolutely. Stay tuned.